Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining. Looks like we have people trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I just want to kind of introduce myself and Listed Kit. I'm Katrina Langland. I am the lead product designer and head of product at Listed Kit, which is a transaction management platform, and we use AI to help TCs with contract processing and building out transaction workflows to grow your TC business. First, I want to, Allison, if you want to introduce yourself, kind of, let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Katrina and Listikit team. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. My name's Allyson Kurak. So I own a full service transaction coordination company. We focus in the state of Texas called Stitched Real Estate. And I have been in real estate basically since after I graduated from college. And then we went full time with Stitched Real Estate. In 2025 will be our second full year of doing it. So, but I was a TC for the past 4 or 5 years. And I'm really passionate about doing the TC work, but then also, helping our team and other people who are interested with things like that, like this, what we're doing today. So
Awesome. I'm so excited to dig in. I'm sure a lot of people that are joining us are familiar with your content, but if you're not, Allison has a ton of great resources, whether you're first starting out as a TC and want to learn about how to get started, or if you're a little bit more experienced, she has great content for wherever you are in your journey. So before we get started, I wanted to encourage everyone to drop any questions you have in the Q&A feature. It's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address those questions at the end of the webinar. But feel free anytime to drop them in there. Awesome. Are you ready?
sure, let's do it.
Great. So first, I just want to hear about like your journey and like what inspired you to become a transaction coordinator, and what the first year of like doing that really looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say that I've had a pretty organic journey in getting to where I am today. And what I mean by that is I kind of evolved until I just got more and more niche with figuring out exactly what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing, what I was skilled at, what was profitable, everything like that. So right after I graduated from college, basically I tried traditional corporate life. It's a joke with my husband and I. He says I made it a month. I say I made it 2 months. But basically, I was just what not cut out for that was not the right route for me. And a family member at the time encouraged me to join real estate and join her brokerage and get my real estate license. So pretty much right out of college, I started within the crazy real estate world. And I was an agent full time for a year. I had a pretty successful rookie year, but I really disliked, I think, what a lot of agents like doing, which was, I enjoyed showing the properties, but the showing the properties, working on the weekends, doing the negotiating, going out and networking with people, meeting people, growing your sphere of influence. Those were not necessarily my favorite things to do. And I was getting praised at the brokerage for having the best like dot loot files. And people were asking me for help with it. And I was like, guys, this is the easiest part of the whole thing. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what y'all are talking about. And I also just realized how much more I had to learn. And I came across, a podcast that was talking about being a real estate assistant. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a good route for me. I'm still young. So, having some type of stable income, opportunity to learn more about the business from someone directly under them, it appealed to me. And so I decided to become a assistant. And from there, I was doing transaction coordinator work and assistant work. So full scope of TC work. Plus, I was doing, ordering mailers, managing office supplies, running the phones, all that kind of stuff. And from there, I realized I really liked the TC work the best. And I remember thinking, I wish I could just do this all day and not the other assistant work. And so then I figured out how I could be a TC full time. And I decided to make that transition by working for a bigger TC company. and then eventually breaking off on my own to get to do the mix of being in control of everything myself, running my own business, and then also getting the time to do the passionate projects, like creating the content for TCs, creating content for agents, but also marketing our business. So it really just evolved over time of knowing I like being in the real estate sphere, figuring out what my skills are, figuring out what I enjoyed the most, and narrowing it down to kind of get where I am today.
I love that. I love the just visualizing like getting started in something and then doubling down on what you really enjoy and are good at. And I think that's so important and also just makes for a better like enjoying the work that you do in the end because that's really what it's about. I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I know you asked about the first year, so I can kind of touch on that as well.
Yeah.
The first year is a lot of building, even though I was working with a company, I was still doing contract work. So basically, very similar to a brokerage setup for an agent. So,
Mhm.
you're still responsible for bringing in your own dollar and stuff at the end of the day. And so there was a lot of building and a lot of learning, and, figuring out how to set good foundations, learning all those little things, which you might get into, how to make things better, challenges, things like that. And then building relationships, building confidence in myself, and all of those things. So it's a lot of preparation, building that client base, getting comfortable, learning those kind of things as well. And I can touch in detail on any more of that. But yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. You touched on challenges. Like, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges you faced, like starting out with all of that building and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that comes to mind is, I had been an agent myself,
Mhm.
so kind of doing things my way, and then I had worked for just one, a large agent in the area, and so I was used to doing things their way, and it was kind of a challenge for me the first time I started getting different clients, right? People who work in different cities, they work for different brokerages, they have vastly different personality types and how they like to do things. And so it's kind of just like, oh, it's not just my way, and it's not just how my old team and team lead was doing its way. It's
Mhm.
I have to figure out how to manage, look at all my files and my tasks. Oh, how does this person like it done? How does this agent like it done? And kind of realizing that it is the same basic steps at the end of the day, but little communication tweaks or how they like something done or an extra step. And I think I didn't anticipate how much of a learning curve it would be with each client, versus just the learning curve of the initial start. So learning different personality types and making your systems match that, which now is funny to say because that's like our big thing we pride ourselves on is that we will customize, to make it the agent's preferences, to an
Yeah.
extent. So that's kind of something I had to learn was that each agent is going to be a little different.
Yeah. How do you learn that with each agent? Like, is that something that you ask up front, or is it kind of like tailored throughout, like working with them?
Yeah, so there's kind of twofold. Both things that you said are correct. Now, when I get someone on the phone, I can kind of tell or anticipate to some extent how they're going to like to work. But upfront onboarding is really critical. So we do have an onboarding script that we go over on our first or second call with them, and just really getting a feel for, what's important to them, things like that, making sure you have all their systems, their information. So setting clear expectations and getting clear information up front is really important.
Mhm.
But I also don't like to push the agents too much into like a hole of before you work with us, you have to fill out this 10-page questionnaire and you have to go to this link on our website, or we have to do a Zoom call because 90% of the time we get a call and the agent wants help like that day or the
Yeah.
next day. So I try to get as much information up front as I can, but then
Mhm.
a lot of it too is learning as you work together. And I
Yeah.
always tell agents, if they ask, it's going to take us about 3 transactions to really get in a comfortable groove and
Mhm.
little things that come up along the way. So also I would encourage you to get information up front, but be flexible because even agents I work with now that I've been working with for years will have a change. You know what? This happened on this deal. Let's start doing this. Or I don't like how we do this anymore. Let's do this. So being flexible to evolve, but also, don't be afraid to maybe have a couple meetings. Like, hey, after we close our second or third deal, can we set up a meeting just to see how that went if we want to change any processes or things like that? So that would be my recommendations on that. It's kind of twofold.
I love that. I love how actionable that is. And like, it sounds like communication is key. Just like going back to 3 transactions, it's about what it takes. And then like setting that meeting is such a good idea to really like level set, be like, okay, how are things going? Like, what do we need to improve, what needs to change, what's working, not working. I love that. Also, when you mentioned, like, when you were working with these different agents and learning, like, their different ways of doing things, and I'm sure when you're working with people in other cities or potentially, like, I don't know, I'm sure Texas has a lot of different MLSs since it's so
Yes.
large. Did you have any, like, resources or mentors that helped, like, along the way and, like, during while building that?
So I actually really didn't have like a mentor per se when I got right into teaching. And the biggest things I've learned is really been from some of my top producing agents. So people maybe that like in a new area, a new marketplace that kind of took a chance on me, or they knew, okay, I've got a really good background, even though I'm not really familiar in like Houston, maybe, right? And
Mhm.
seeing how those top producing agents work, because most of the time they already have systems built out and they're just plugging and playing you in their system. And so they know, and even just listening to them, right? Listening to them on calls, going through their process with them, watching them, that was a way that helped me learn so much. And that's just how I've learned over the years in general. But also, like we said, we focus in Texas because that's our bread and butter, and it has mostly the same processes, but even neighborhoods, right, can be unique. So
Yeah.
also not being afraid to ask an agent. It's really just kind of keeping that like critical eye out. If you notice something on a contract that's off, maybe just ask someone about it, right? Or do some research after, even if it's not something that comes up during that transaction, but anything you can do to educate yourself. But really, a huge part of it is, working with teams or high producing agents and brokerages and just getting that exposure because there's so many little details to everything that things do just take time to learn, but
Yeah.
also not being afraid to ask.
I love that. Not being afraid to ask is a huge thing. I think so many people, like, are afraid that how it might look asking, but that's how you learn, and, I think that there's no shame in doing that. So you worked with a variety of agents in Texas, and how did you approach finding your first clients? Because I know you talked about you were an executive assistant, um, for, the high producing agent. Yeah, do you wanna touch on that and, like, how your strategy may have evolved as you, like, grew your business?
Yeah, because it's completely different when you start day one and you don't have a single client to when you
Yeah,
get to the point where you're just trying to grow or maintain. And the first client I ever signed up on my own was actually someone who had started at the brokerage at the same time I did. So we were doing like our real estate classes together. We were getting our training together. We were doing the brokerage onboarding, and someone I stayed in touch with briefly over the years. And, I think people may see my content now, but I used to just post on Facebook and I would only post so often, but I knew that's where all my contacts were. And I think real estate agents love Facebook if you've never noticed.
they do, they do.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm just going to post here some, try to get people from my personal network. And that is really the best way to start. I think people probably said it to you before, anyone listening, is like a joke, like everyone's uncle is a real estate agent or something like that, but it's true. So focusing on getting your foot in the door with people you know closely. Like they actually reached out to me and I went and had lunch with her. And then it was a great start to also then start to remind our other friends at the brokerage. And that brokerage eventually had a small team that they were launching, and that really boosted my business. And those were all from previous contacts, just people I knew personally. I hadn't directly worked with in a couple of years, but they had good experience with me, knew me, we had good rapport. And just by subtly reminding them that I was there, online and things like that, or reaching out to those people directly, that's really the best place to start. That's exactly where I got my start. And then it grows from there.
Yeah, word of mouth and everything once you start with this group of people and them telling other people and everything, and I liked what you said about just subtly reminding them. I feel like that's something that I've learned too is when you're marketing it, you might feel like you're saying the same things over and over again, but you don't know who's seeing that post or seeing that each and every time. So just being consistent and doing that, I'm sure is a great way to just subtly remind people that hey, you're there, you're ready to to help them
And
think.
you never know when they're going to come across the post, right? They may see six of
Yeah,
your posts and then not realize they want to hire someone, and then they see that seventh post or whatever. So,
right.
and then just to touch on the second part of your question, how that evolves, right? So still, we actually did kind of an audit over the summer, and still our number one like source of new clients is current client, past client, personal referrals. So it really is that word of mouth, even regardless of everything we do online, that just continues to prove to be the true like bread and butter of our business. But once you have those first level clients, you open yourself up to even more opportunity for that. So that never really goes away. But then you also get more agent connections, vendor connections, more people to connect with. You get more opportunities to ask for a referral. You get the opportunity to maybe pitch the agent on the other side of the deal once you close a couple deals. So really that start never goes away, but you can also just evolve your marketing plan to include more of that. And how can I reach these new contacts I have, these new people that I have, and kind of scale it from there?
Yeah, I love that idea, and I love the idea of reaching out to the cooperating agent. That's a really great way because you don't know where people are with transaction management. They have somebody, or um, if they're starting to get overwhelmed, like you said, agents will come to you, first time agents, and being like, "I need somebody now. I am overwhelmed. I got a lot going on." So that's such a great takeaway. Um, so you mentioned Texas is obviously, we touched on this, huge. It's a huge market, a lot of challenges like flood zones in the south. You have the districts in Houston, the MUD. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, we have those in north of Dallas area too, as that continues to grow. So MUDs, PIDs, SUDs, it's basically special utility districts or extra taxing districts. What comes along with those is typically extra paperwork. So there's going to need to be forms that are filled out. If it's part of the listing, it's going to be notated on the listing. And so that's kind of something that I mentioned can get neighborhood, city specific. Sometimes property has a mud and a pit, and even a really experienced agent can get confused because it can just be a little bit of a confusing process as this has come into fruition. But yeah, you spoke of Houston. When I first started, I had only been familiar with the greater Dallas DFW area of Texas, but I felt like I knew everything. And getting the opportunity to start working in other cities and learning, like Houston, that was the first time I experienced a flood district. But now I know anywhere to where to look out for. And then same thing with the MUDs. Houston has a ton of MUDs, but it's all over the state, right? So making sure you're aware of like your core forms, your core processes, but then making sure you're kind of keeping that critical eye out for what's unique about each transaction. Now, I know if I'm looking in Houston, I'm going to be looking, do we need a flood disclosure? Are we in a flood zone? I'm going to be looking for, mud districts in those areas I know, but that doesn't mean I'm still not checking every time. And
Yeah.
a great way to kind of learn this too is through compliance. So the brokerages are going to require these documents.
Mhm.
Some make it much easier where they basically give you this big green lighted list of this is exactly what you need based on their terms. But some of them you are going to have to kind of learn that upfront, or they'll, kick your file back and say, we're missing XYZ. And as long as you're being proactive on things, you're having conversations with the agent because the agent should know all this information. And you
Mhm.
can just show value by asking or confirming upfront if there's anything you're uncertain of. Then you can take these opportunities to learn like, okay, oh, my file got kicked back on this. I need to know about this for next time. And then also not being afraid to just look out for other resources. So if you're an active agent, there's probably continuing education classes or vendor partners like title companies or someone who may host a class. And so always, even though you're not actually doing the agent work, making sure you're staying up to date on all that, looking for those external resources that you can do because you're just always going to prove your value when you catch something that an agent doesn't or anything like that. So, and then like we said, not being afraid to ask, I noticed this on that last deal. Is that typically standard? There's ways to ask without just looking ignorant, but looking like you want to make the process better and make sure things go smooth in the future.
Yeah, I love that idea of turning the question for more of like in the future and really setting yourself up so you're looking proactive rather than like, looking back and just being and asking those questions in that
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
I know when you and Faye were talking earlier, y'all were talking about some like high volume, like the strategy with TCs of either going high volume and serving a lot of agents, or maybe focusing on like a smaller clients, but maybe doing like more work, maybe outside of transaction coordination or something like that. So I'm just curious, like, what approaches work best for you? And like, do you have any insights into focusing on high volume or focusing on, smaller number of clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, I think like kind of a mix. So I think the perfect is to have a combination of high producing agents and also lower producing agents. The reason for this is kind of you don't want to just, oh, I got this one huge team that I can work with. And then, you don't worry about anybody else just because we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, in case something were ever happened, somebody could quit, the team could dissolve, something could happen. And so I like having a mix of different parts of the state, different brokerages, different types of agents and how they work. But that does come with challenges in terms of streamlining because each agent likes to communicate differently. Each type of agent likes to communicate differently. I mean, we work with a high volume of agents, but we only have about like 10% of those does 90% of the business, which I think is true in real estate across the board. So we
Yeah.
never want to say no to a client, whether it's a part-time agent or just someone who's growing their business, maybe a newer agent. But we also, we have to focus on thinking about, what has the best ROI. And typically that is going to be those higher producing agents. And what I like about higher producing agents, even if you're brand new to this or thinking about it and you're like, well, I'm scared, I don't want to jump in with some team or some group who does a ton of deals. Like I mentioned earlier, they already have systems set up. So you can learn a lot from them. And they may even be able to give you a checklist of this is what our last TC did. This is what we want you to do. And not that that should override what you have planned, but it's a great way to learn and scale. Also, with high producing agents, I find they tend to be they want less communication, right? They want to be able to trust that you're just handling everything. They have so much else going on. They just have a lot of responsibility and they want to know that they can trust you with that. So you might only check in with them once a week or even less, right? And that's something we ask clients about. If they want to do a weekly meeting with us, we're happy to set that up just to run through all the transactions. And with my high producers, I may never talk to them again throughout the week because I'm handling everything else. A lot of times with lower producing agents or part-time agents, they just, each deal holds more weight for them, right? They're not closing 10 plus deals a month. They might be closing one every other month. So they're spending a lot more time thinking about it. And we may need to support them a little differently. They may want more one-on-one communication. They may still want a call, a meeting, even if they only have one deal to discuss. They may want a text, hey, just so you know, I just checked on this, just because they don't have that automation level that higher producers do. So I think overall a mix is great because especially when you're brand new, you don't want to turn away a client, right? Target those high producers because they can really help scale your business quickly and make sure you have something steady. Even if a market takes a dip, a high producing team, maybe they drop from 10 deals a month to 5 or an individual agent, whatever it may be. So you still have something coming in, but we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket and we want to be able to service a variety of clients.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and I love that's so interesting that the higher volume agents tend to not want as
Talk
much
less.
texting, but it
Yeah.
makes sense because, they're working on their next lead. They, again, have those systems in place, and they're really just trusting you to be the expert in that and to handle it. So that totally makes sense. But I like the idea of diversifying just for the reason that you said. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so throughout this whole conversation, you've talked a lot about like communication, like, these agents prefer to communicate this way, but then even like you as a TC, how you communicate with agents and clients and stuff. Um, and that can really obviously like make or break your workflow and like your business and how you work with those. Do you have like how do you manage communication with those high volume agents, but like in a way that's like those weekly meetings and stuff? Like what are you typically talking about? What are they like interested in hearing? And what do you usually share during those?
Yeah, absolutely. So our weekly meetings are always very structured with any of our clients, and it is basically a bulleted run through of every open deal they have. It's an opportunity for us to bring up things that are outstanding or to their attention, and then vice versa. And there's a lot of things you'll notice if you're doing this is that, oh, the agent had this one-off conversation that they forgot to tell you about because it was Saturday morning and we don't work on the weekends, and then they just never sent an email or text follow-up. And I
Yeah.
find by sitting down, and some people may disagree with this, and we don't do it with all of our clients, but by sitting down and just taking 15, 30 minutes once a week, they'll be like, oh, well, maybe I'll say 123 Main Street. and they'll say, oh, I forgot I also talked to the seller about this and they want to do this, where they could have just forgotten to tell me. So having a time to just sit down and debrief really quickly and efficiently for everyone, it helps the client experience be better. It helps there be less last minute changes. And sometimes there's things that are just hard to explain over a text or an email, right? Maybe I'm like, hey, I noticed something's weird on this document. Like, can I talk to you about it? But for me, I would rather take 4 or 5 hours of my week to do set meetings than get interrupted on a non-meeting day with interrupting workflows and text. And so really about scaling, I find it more beneficial to have time set aside to have conversations than to
Yeah.
get a bunch of interrupting text, emails, phone calls, stuff like that. So I find that's an easier way to scale. And then the high producing agents really like that as well because it doesn't interrupt their workflow either.
Yeah. While you were thinking or talking about that, I was thinking a lot about like boundaries because I feel like that's something that can easily with agents, maybe asking you to handle something that's typically outside of transaction management. How do you handle that? Like, do you do that for the agents? Do you charge more if there's extra work or yeah, how do you communicate that?
Yeah. So in terms of boundaries of work scope, so we have all of our agents sign a customer agreement and it outlines exactly what is within our work scope. Other things can be up to TC's discretion just because every deal is a little different.
Mhm.
But for example, if there's something we are not going to do, that's the agent's responsibility, we are going to turn that back on the agent. But what I advise for this is spin it positive somehow, right? Because the agent doesn't want to hear, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that, because it is a customer service based business at the end of the day, right? But maybe it's that they have repairs that they want to discuss with the seller, right? That is not our responsibility, at least in my business. And so I might say, hey, that's going to be up to you to have that conversation with them, talking about negotiating terms or anything like that. But once you guys come to an agreement, if there's a document that you want me to send for signature, like just send it my way and I'll get that sent. So thinking of what can I do in this situation that would be helpful to the client, and thinking, okay, how can I spin it? So it's like, this is going to be your responsibility as soon as that's done. Or something popular people get asked about, I know a lot in the TC world, is offers. So maybe like, hey, we don't write offers, but as soon as the contract's executed, send it over to us and we'll work on it ASAP. So that's a response I've used in the past. So thinking of keeping your firm boundaries, setting those up front, and then not doing a subtle reminder of, I can't do that, but I can do this, and this is where we're going to help you.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually, we just had a question come through that kind of, I think, touches on this. So they're asking, how do you suggest maintaining your business instead of scaling or growing it while not risking being too slow? So kind of finding that like nice middle ground of not being too busy and not, not losing business.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that can be, crazy, right? If overnight everything changes. And so that is kind of what happened to me is I grew a little steadily. I got an opportunity with a team, which like kicked off my business. And then I'm like, this is like 2020, 21. So then things just like erupted. And it was a huge learning curve for me. And I just had to learn while I was in the thick of it. So
Mhm.
if you can, you can't always pace it, right? If you get two people who want to send you 20 deals a month, you're probably going to say yes and figure it out. But I think a good thing to start with is, start, like we said, with those people, regardless of what they are. Maybe you can find a couple agents that can support you financially or at least have you getting, off the bat to where you're comfortable. And then if you're okay with that, stay there for a little while. Figure out how to optimize it. When an 8 hour, see if you can take an 8 hour workday to a 5, 6 hour workday. And once you get to that point, then start continuing to take on more clients or put more energy into taking on more clients, I should say. We never stop marketing, right? But maybe we do bigger pushes at certain times. So you're consistently have a marketing plan but maybe you're not cold calling or cold emailing or texting people, but you're maybe doing your social post or your weekly newsletter or whatever it may be, you're maintaining marketing plan, and then you have a push marketing plan. But yeah, I mean, the amount of stuff I do in a workday now compared to when I first started, a good example of this is a contract used to take me an hour to process. And this is something where like ListKit's technology would be super helpful too. Now it can take me like 20 to 30 minutes to process a whole contract. So get yourself to a point where you're feeling more efficient and then maybe do those marketing pushes. So figuring out a baseline marketing plan and then kind of a push marketing plan. and also just focusing on being more effective. I tell people when they start out, I'd rather hear that you only work actually on TC work 2 hours a day than that you just sit there all day for no reason, because you could, once you scale, then you don't want to be working a 15-hour day. So figuring
Yeah.
out your efficiencies is probably the biggest piece of advice there.
I love that. So I hear efficiencies, which of course, being with the stick kit, we're all about systems. We're all about, making work more efficient, like reducing data entry, because we all know we spend enough time doing that as a transaction coordinator. And then also I love the idea of, and this is your marketing background coming into play, you know, pushing during certain times. And it's so hard as the market fluctuates too. I mean, agents can't predict it, TCs, obviously we're impacted by that. So I love the idea of just working on efficiency. So when the marketing or when the market kind of increases and more volumes come through, you're not spending, like you said, a 15-hour workday. I love that. Let's see. Yeah, someone said excellent idea, having a marketing plan and a push plan, and they said thank you for that. Um,
Great.
so as we approach the new year, I know we're all thinking like we're about to hit the holidays and then we have 2025 setting new goals and everything. What advice would you give to TCs who are like looking at their systems and setting goals for 2025? Or would you like to share your goals?
Yeah, so I'm still working on my goals. I guess I'm running out of time. I think we're a week from Christmas. So, but in terms of other things we're doing is, just going through systems again. So throughout the year on any given day, maybe I noticed a word on an email template that needs to be tweaked. I'll just go in and fix that really fast. But then I also kind of have a compiling list of notes of things maybe to look into more, right?
Mhm.
This is kind of just prepping for 2025, but I know Texas is going to have more contract changes again. I think some of them are positive, so I'm excited about those. But that's something we want to be ahead of the curve because the agents are probably going to ask about it. Or we want to make sure that when we're reviewing documents that they're the right documents. So that would be something to look into too, is how, are there changes coming up in your state or your area next year that you should be aware of?
Mhm.
And then going through, like I mentioned, a list of things you want to improve on. Okay, what about this other email template or this template? I noticed that this could probably be done better, or I had an idea about it, but I need to sit down and think about it. Like you said, the market fluctuates, and sometimes before the end of the year is crazy, but typically around the holidays is a little bit slower. So
Mhm.
utilize this slower time to clean up. Maybe you've got files that need to be reorganized. Maybe you need to look at your email templates again, go through all of them, make sure they are set up for success. I know there's even little things where it's like a comma where it probably doesn't need to be. And every time I do an email, I go in and fix it. I need to go in and fix that in the back
Love
end of
that.
my email template, right?
Yeah.
Because even that little thing, like seconds add up to minutes, which add up to hours. And if you want to scale a TC business or you want to be part-time, right? Maybe you want to close 5 deals a month, but you only want to work an hour or so a day. Seconds add up to minutes, add up to hours, add up to days. And so taking time to be like, what will even save me seconds, which might sound really small. Go through your systems, think if there's anything that can save you even just seconds or minutes, because it is going to add up in next year. And you can use that time to work on your bigger goals or things like that, or have your time off or just be more efficient. So that's something that we always kind of do end of year, beginning of year. And then just kind of really being specific about marketing, going through who did we work with the last year. Like I said, we did an audit over the summer.
Yeah.
Where did I get my business from? Where did I get most of my business from? So that when you're making that marketing plan, you're focusing on things that pay off. Maybe your social media has never given you a client. Well, I don't think we should stop doing that. But if we're putting a ton of time and energy into it, maybe there's something else that gives us clients. Maybe going to in-person events every quarter has been really beneficial to you. So auditing your past year in terms of systems and also in terms of where you've gotten your business from is really beneficial to plan for 2025.
I love that. I love, yeah, systems. And I love the analogy of seconds add up to minutes, add up to hours. And that's so true, especially when you're doing the same things for every single deal. That's so true. Um, well, this has been so great. That's all the questions I had. Let me check the Q&A here. But this has been so great. And I love the idea of the audit. And we actually had a question about your summer audit. Do you mind like sharing more details about what you're evaluating, like what other things you looked at, and anything else that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing for me was just it was mostly for marketing. So, where are we getting our clients from? And I went through every single thing we do for marketing and I wrote it out and I wrote out every single client that we'd signed on and where they came from. And then compiling it into categories. And then after I did that, obviously I figured out like the top 2 to 3 biggest sources that are beneficial to us. And then I went through everything, not just the top 2 or 3. And I said, what could we do better? How do we take what we're already marketing and then improve on it? And like a small specific example I'll share is after we close a deal, we like to connect with the vendors on like LinkedIn or socials. And I was like, well, how about we also start sending a little personalized note? It's like, hey, we just closed this deal together. It was so great to work with you, instead of just doing that follow or that connection. So that's kind of an example of what's something I'm already doing. And then how do I just take it to the next level in terms of marketing? And it can be done in your task, right? Maybe you already send one like utility email reminder. It's like, okay, well, how can I take that to the next level? Or thinking back too on what were common client questions, or what were some maybe big issues that maybe if it's not my fault as a TC that happened in a transaction, is there anything I can do as a TC to make sure that doesn't happen to my agents next time? And some of those things will take a lot of thought. Like I said, you've got time to think about it. But if you don't have that experience, if someone's listening who they're just thinking about starting their TC business, I would say set up your system, set up your software. If it's listed kit, get in there and set it up to the best of your ability. Because like I said, agents may want to start working with you quickly. And the most important thing you can do is have those systems in place. And by systems, we're talking task templates, email templates, processes for client onboarding, processes for marketing, thinking about that. It's the only way to successfully, easily scale.
I love that. I love the idea. It sounded like I saw on your website that you have so many great spreadsheets and checklists and courses. And when you were talking about doing the, agents and where they came from, I just imagined like the most beautiful spreadsheet that you created because all of your spreadsheets are so great. So yeah, again, those systems, check out her website, which is, let me get back to it, stitchedre.com. Is that right, Allison?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. A lot of great resources there. And if you do choose to use ListaKit as your system, we do concierge onboarding. So you can buy a checklist from Allison and we will do the work of adding all the tasks, all the resources there. So it's in the system. So when you have your first deal, you start your first deal, apply that checklist, and it's there relative to the closing dates and any kind of dates like that. We did have some questions come in. Let me pull them
Okay.
up real quick. Let's see. I'm new to transaction coordination and I'm working on 5 deals at a time right now. This is my first time doing this many at once. How long does it take for you to open a file? And is it taking, or wait 1 second. It is taking me at least 45 minutes or more. Is this normal? Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
5
Yeah.
minutes
So
to open a new file. How is that?
absolutely. So totally normal, especially for being new. 45 minutes. You're doing better than I was. It would take me an hour. And I have been able to, from templates, specifically email templates, cut that down to now about 20 minutes. So it initially took me an hour. And then I was able to eventually get in a groove of about 30 minutes. And that was really from going back to those email templates, those systems, and just pure necessity. And then I've eventually now been able to cut it down to sometimes as little as 20 minutes, depending on the transaction. But I have a very specific process, and we do have a video on YouTube about how I do that. If you guys want to check that out, that's just a free video that goes over my exact process for opening a file that you may find helpful. But yeah, you're doing totally fine, doing better than I was. But it really is about processes. I follow the exact same process every time. And even like I'm putting in the people's information at the same time, the people's dates. I don't jump over the place. It's very systematic. And then the email templates were the biggest thing. Being able to have stuff auto-populate. I used to handwrite every single thing. And then I would like quadruple check it because I hand wrote it instead of letting the computer do the information, or, typed it, I should say. So getting those processes down. But yeah, totally normal, but you can definitely probably improve over time as you get used to it.
Yeah, I love that. I love email templates. That's my favorite feature in Listed Kit because you input the data. Like you said, we have the merge field. So you're not having to handwrite it like you said you were originally doing. So
That
you,
was what cut it from an hour to 30 minutes, was
yeah,
not having to handwrite each data and be able to use merge fields.
Love that. Loves me some good merge fields. And then she said, do you debrief with clients on Fridays and follow up on Mondays?
So I don't do any type of formal debrief on Friday. One thing we do every Friday afternoon is we send out reminder emails, and this is something that can be automated, of any deadlines that are going to happen over the weekend. That way, we are still proactively informing the agent, because during the week, we have those go out right at 9 a.m. Like, hey, FYI, your inspection period ends today at 5. Just one more reminder to let them know that we're reminding them. And we do that Friday afternoon. Say, hey, your inspection period is going to end tomorrow, Saturday, December 20th at 5 or whatever it is. So we do that on Fridays. In terms of if we're debriefing doing meetings with clients, or if you want to do like a recap email, I actually recommend avoiding Mondays and Fridays. Those are actually the busiest days. So I try to only schedule calls during the middle days of the week. When you come to Monday, the agent has been working Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and maybe early Monday morning. And so you're catching up on all of those emails, texts, phone calls, whatever it is that came in over the weekend. So I really have to be able to sit down and go through all that on Monday. So I would say if you're starting, that's probably gonna be a difficult expectation to keep up, is to always do something on Mondays. So I would recommend more the middle of the week. Fridays too, people trying to get you to help them with something before the end of the day. I always
Yeah.
joke that's like everyone else, like Friday afternoon, woohoo. I'm like, Friday's like, we have to do this, 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 and this by 5 because they need
Yeah.
before the weekend. So yeah, we do make sure they're aware of any contractual deadlines that are going to fall over the weekend, or if there was some big type of final reminder. But outside of that, no standard debrief.
I love that. I love the idea of it sounds like kind of like time blocking. Like Mondays we do this to catch up and then during the week you could even like time block time to like send updates to agents and those kind of things. And I love it's you can tell you've done this a couple years because you know that like this is when the agents come in. They've been working all weekend. I love that.
Yeah.
Um and then she asked, how many files could one TC do at one time? Once again, do it one time in 1 month. So, like, how in a month, how many can you, just being a solo TC, handle?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of what you can handle, the most I've ever closed in 1 month is 59 deals. Um, my sweet,
You're a superhuman, first of
yeah,
all.
that was like a height of like
Wow.
post-COVID, like, yeah. But my sweet spot where I feel comfortable doing this completely full time, 25 to 30 files a month. But for me, that's like hitting my goals, keeping that sweet spot. And that's something I've had to build up to, right? There was a long time where my sweet spot was more like 10 files a month. And then maybe I got into like 15 to 20. And like I said, it's really about efficiency and systems. And some things you'll just learn along the way how you like to work, right? I could give advice on here all day, but everybody's brain works a little differently. So while you set up your systems, you may learn over time, oh, this works better for me, actually. You know what? If I do it this way, I will get work done faster. And so part of kind of we talked about building and growing a business, it's also going to be figuring out how you can scale what works for you, what pace works for you. So that's kind of my sweet spot. There are TCs that close even more than that a month. There are people that close 100 deals a month. Like I said, my big months have always been like over 50. But it is completely possible and you will get used to it. You will get better at it, quicker, faster, more efficient. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a slow burn to get there rather than just jumping off the deep end.
Yeah, going back to the goal setting question for the new year, that might even be a great place to start. Like, right now I'm struggling with 10 a month. Let's like see if I can up it and start feeling more comfortable with 15 deals a month and then like slowly kind of increasing as you improve those efficiencies, as you improve those systems, being able to take more, well, maybe even not even growing the number of hours you work a week, but more just how much you can handle in that time that you're working. I love
Yeah,
that.
no, I think that's a great goal too.
Let's see. Let me go to this next question. Alex says, first of all, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. I really appreciate the helpful information. My question is, what time did you bring on additional assistance from being a solo TC?
Yeah, so that took me a really, really long time. Basically, because I wanted to make sure I was at a point where I was consistently closing enough. And, additional assistance could look different for everyone. Maybe it's just outsourcing something, right? So we decided to grow our team where they manage their own clients, their own files, but that helps me be able to help more agents, leads that come in. And then occasionally maybe they're able to help me with something as well. Whereas like hiring an assistant or something, you would need to make sure you're in that financial place to do that kind of stuff. But I would make sure you're consistently busy for at least like 3 to 4 months where you're feeling like you can't handle it. And then figure out what your pain points are. Maybe do I just need to hire someone to help me do my social media? Do I need to just pay someone to help me do my bookkeeping? Like, so make sure you have at least 3 to 4 months and maybe check different points throughout the year, typical busier times versus typical slower times, and just make sure it's consistent if it's not like seasonal help. So taking a few months, making sure being consistent in how many deals you're closing and pinpointing, exactly what those pain points are and start outsourcing slowly. Like I said, start with
Yeah.
one thing, start with two things, and then maybe eventually you'll realize you need to grow your team or you need a full-time assistant or something like that.
I love that. That's so great. Michelle was asking about systems, and it looks like she's about at 5 transactions or less a month. Do you have any like platforms that you recommend? And is it too early to start building a system with just 5 transactions a month?
No, absolutely not. My number one piece of advice is no matter how many deals you have, even if it's zero, I would highly, highly recommend investing in some type of software, some type of transaction management software, because you need one central place to track all of your deals, right? Maybe right now with your 5 deals a month, you work with just one brokerage, like a Keller Williams, right? And it's easy-ish for you to track all of your deals within their systems and then maybe like a spreadsheet or something. But if your goal is to grow, even if it's not, I guarantee you if you download or invest in a software that's specifically for TCs or transaction management, it's going to make a huge difference in your life. Because this is the only like I want one place that I can log into every single day that shows me what I need to do. I don't care what the agents need to do. I don't care what other people need to do. Where is my centralized place that just tells me exactly what I need to do, that I can set up my systems and my templates in? And even if you don't have the budget for it, maybe you're able to create like a spreadsheet. Or when I used to work at Keller Williams, we actually did paper files, like manila folders, and we printed all the papers and we put them in there.
Yep.
So some type of system, obviously investing in a transaction management platform. A lot of them are really relatively decent pricing, especially monthly and things like that. I recommend it no matter what volume you're at, even if you're at zero and you're just getting started, investing in that is what will help you scale.
Yeah, and of course, a quick plug for List Kit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of transaction management platforms available, and I think there's a lot of really powerful ones like A-Frame TC Docs. But I will say Listed Kit is really great for newer transaction coordinators who are getting started building their systems. It's very user friendly, not very overwhelming to like try and figure out and everything. So just a shameless plug for Listed Kit there. And the pricing, especially compared to some larger platforms, we have unlimited transactions, unlimited users. So as your team grows, we're not charging you for each user number of transactions, anything like that. And let's see, one more question here. Do you have a system to ensure you change that scheduled email, or do you remember each time you go and update it?
Yeah, so there's two kind of different ways here. So actually see the question you said deadlines can change quite a bit. From
Yeah.
my experience, they don't change in often enough that it's become an issue in going in and updating that email. And there may be systems, and you may be able to touch on this more if there's something kind of automation or something like that. But there's two kind of ways to do this. So I have often in the past always gone in and every day and every Friday sent out those email reminders manually. It's the first thing I did every single morning. Then there's the approach of automating it, but knowing that if there's a change, you're going to have to go back and fix it. So that is kind of the process for us. We don't have a specific system that like automatically changes our email if we change a certain date. But in my experience, the deadlines for sending reminders for aren't changing often enough that if one changes, I'm not able to go and manually update it in that way. So I would just see what makes more sense for you. If you notice you have a lot that change, maybe it is more time conscious to just send them manually every day or every weekend or whatever it is. Or maybe you schedule them into the day before when it's a little more certain that the date's going to be with this versus scheduling everything at the beginning of the transaction. So those are kind of some different ways to work it and ways I play with it in the past. But in our experience, it doesn't change often enough that doing the manual change has become a bottleneck for us yet.
Yes. Thank you for catching the deadlines changing.
Yeah,
That's some
no, it's just a
important
quick
context that I
question.
forgot to say there. Yeah, actually on Listed Kit, you can your emails, if you have them set relative to like a closing date. So let's say the closing date gets pushed back a week. If the email is set to send out, let's say 2 days before closing as like a closing reminder or utilities email, it will change if you go in and update that closing date. So
Oh,
funding
even better.
for Listed
Yes.
Kit, but it does have to be like set to that relative date. So when you make that change, it automatically updates. But yeah, going in and definitely doing those checks because nobody wants an email going out that has wrong information or anything. That's never a great thing. So good question there. Well,
Awesome.
Allyson, I know we're over time. Thank you so much for everything. This has been so insightful and so actionable. Where can people go? I know you mentioned your website. You have a great YouTube channel as well. Is there any place else people should go to learn more about you?
Yeah, no, I think you've mostly covered it. If you head to our website, like you mentioned, stitchedre.com, and we've got a lot of TC resources on there. You also should probably get to our YouTube, which is just at Stitch Real Estate. Lots of free resources. Also, like you mentioned, we do have some checklists and some other items if you're looking to get into TC business or grow. So really check out anything on our website. You can also contact us through there or social media, and we're happy to connect with anyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining. I would love for everybody to follow along on our YouTube channel as well. It's Listed Kit. We'll be posting this recording along with other webinar recordings, just information about being a TC, scaling your business, how to get started, as well as Listed Kit information. So thank you so much. We'll be sending out a recording in case anybody missed this. But just thank you, Allyson, again, and thank you everybody for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.